Hey, thanks for joining us. This is Dr. Jere with Mills Chiropractic and Wellness Center, and we're continuing our series on digital dementia-like symptoms in teens and adolescents. And so we're starting to come to the end of this webinar series. And as we do that, I want to really dive into a very serious topic today, and one that I really hope everybody pays attention to and focuses in on, and that's on teen suicides. One of the statistics that just really has grabbed my attention is that since the invention of the iPhone, I'm not blaming the iPhone, but since we've started living more of our life online, right? Since over the last decade, the percentage of teen suicides has increased by 56%. And if you go back and you rewatch some of our videos at the beginning, you can start to understand what may be going on, part of what's going on with this. We're using lower parts of the brain. We're not using the logic center as much. It's driving anxiety and panic and depression, our posture, the amygdala. If you remember back to those lessons, the stress and the cortisol release, the foods that we eat, all these factors. And I'm not saying teen suicide is simply because of technology. Kids nowadays, they live in so much more pressure. From my generation, if our pressure, yeah, we had to get good grades and those kinds of things. But when I graduated, a 4.0 would put you at top of your class, right? Nowadays, kids, in order to be the top of their class to get into the good schools, they got to have like a 4.5 or 5.0 maybe is what's coming next, right? Like they got to be taking all these honor courses. They have the pressure of school. And then they also have all this pressure of never really being able to step away from things. When we would leave school, we left school, right? Maybe we'd call a friend or something at night, but for the most part, we were separated, right? Well, kids nowadays, they never get that separation. They never get that time to themselves. And so, there's just so much pressure on them. And then again, like I said, especially with social media, one of the research articles that got my attention a few years ago is there is a direct link on the amount of time that you spend online and the increased risk of suicide. And it was regardless of content, right? Which was, kind of surprising. It didn't matter if you were watching cat films or, watching some violent, situation or just cruising through social media. Um, there was this increased uptick. And again, I think part of that's we talked about in the beginning of our series with the differences that occur in the brain. And so I really want to, as parents, we wouldn't let our kids go play in the swimming pool without, when they're young, putting them in a life jacket and then teaching them how to swim and building our way up through that. The same thing with driving a car, right? Like we wouldn't just put them in a car and say, here's the keys, figure it out yourself, right? Like we kind of walk them through it. We teach them as kids, look both ways as they're learning to ride their bike and learning how to navigate and watch out for traffic. And then we progress on up to driver's ed and then to the driving with our kids in the car with them, and so there's this progression, right? Well, it's kind of the same thing with technology, except, I kind of, the epiphany that kind of came to me as I was kind of learning this, it'd be like our parents not ever knowing how to drive a car, like when you came along and cars were, just kind of invented and all the kids, started getting cars. That's kind of how I feel a little bit. And I think that's how a lot of parents feel. And so the truth is cars aren't going anywhere for any time soon, right? Like we've had to learn how to live with cars. We've had to learn how to try to build cars safer and be safe in cars. But that's the same thing that we're kind of going through with social media and technology right now, right? And so as parents, we got some catching up to do. We need to learn, how to help navigate our kids to set them up for success as they start to embark into this new world. And just like cars aren't going anywhere, neither is technology, right? And so some of the tips, and I'm going to throw out at you just really quick, is first educate yourself. Learn about, there's a lot of good stuff out there. Learn about that. Also learn about some of the pitfalls, some of the dangers. What are some of the stop signs that you need to be looking out for with this. And unfortunately, this is certainly a topic in and of itself. I can't go all the way through it in as much depth as I wish I could. But, some of the tips that I've heard that I think are really good tips is, helping your kids come up with their social media legacy. What is it that they want to portray? What person are they wanting to be in their online? And I think that's important in our everyday life too. So, if you guys haven't done that, I encourage you to do that. Sit down, really think about what legacy do you want to leave? You know, have time where the kids can, you know, pull away from technology, have detox time as family. I think that's one of the reiterating steps. I'll keep reminding you. You have to do it as a family. Um, you can't just take the kid's phone away and then go get on your phone. Like that's not setting a good example. But kids need to be able to separate, and a lot of kids will actually be happy that parents take their phone away at night from them, because they can simply just tell their friends, I got to check out. But there's also this big fear of missing out, right? This idea that that they're not getting included, right? And we all want to be included, and there's this big draw for that. As humans, we want to be part of that group, and so we got to understand that and help walk through them, and then also help kids understand, why are you reaching for your phone, right? Why are you posting certain things? And so, like I said, there's a lot of resources out there, and really what I'm going to kind of do is kind of highlight and encourage parents to spend some time educating themselves so that they can help navigate. It's hard to teach somebody how to drive a car if you yourself can't drive a car. And so that's where a lot of us as parents are. We don't know how to drive the car. We're scared of the car. But with social media and technology and things, kids are figuring this out much faster than we are as adults, and so we really need to catch up, because we need to be able to provide some guidance. And so like I said, there's some great resources out there. Social media matters is a good resource. My life online has resources, and so there's just and apps that you can monitor and things like that. In the beginning, like I said, you wouldn't just put the kid behind the car; you'd have somebody ride with them. Well, that's kind of what you kind of have to do too. And then as they show that they can handle it and things like that, then that's when you can start graduating. But just giving them the keys to the car is oftentimes a recipe for disaster. And so, while assisting suicide there's so many factors with it. It's not just social media, so there's a whole bunch of other things. But I do believe social media plays a role, and so I would be remiss if I did an entire series on digital dementia and did not talk about how that correlates with the lower, not thinking clearly, not using logic, you being anxious, being in that fight or flight response, and so that's kind of where I wanted to kind of make sure I got into this series, because it's such an important topic. I apologize for this one being so long. Thanks. Stay healthy, stay well.